Hello everyone, welcome to John Redmann Power of Attorney, the show that aims to empower you through increasing your knowledge of the law. I'm attorney John Redmann.
And hello everyone, I'm Shauna Sanford. Welcome to the show. Well, it can be a nightmare situation. After searching for a credible attorney, then you discover that he or she is not as ethical as you thought. Well, what do? The rules are very clear when it comes to how all lawyers in Louisiana and across the country should conduct business with their clients, above board and ethically. But that doesn't always happen. Joining us today is a New Orleans attorney known nationwide for winning multi-million-dollar cases. He says lawyers who break the rules damage their clients and the public in general.
Our guest today, one of the most respected attorneys in the nation, is a big believer in lawyers adhering to the code of conduct. But unfortunately, there have been too many cases of lawyers violating the very rules they promised to follow. Attorney Russ Herman is our guest today, and he will join us in just a moment.
And right before Attorney Herman joins us, John, I want to ask you, who establishes that code of conduct?
Well, every state has its own lawyer disciplinary boards through the State Bar Association for each state. In Louisiana, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel is responsible for policing the attorneys in each state under the aegis of the state Supreme Court. Every state is responsible for making sure that lawyers play by the rules. Mm-hmm. And there are professional rules that are they're written, and you can find out about them. You can go online and find these. Lawyers have a duty to follow the rules. They can't lie, cheat, and steal. Unfortunately, some do.
Some do. And
you read about them in the papers, and some you don't read about. But unfortunately, it's a problem, and lawyers continue to break the rules, and sometimes in very serious ways, and we're going to be talking about it today.
That's right. That's right. Coming up, Attorney Russ Herman will join us for a very important conversation about the ethical responsibilities all lawyers have, and some things as potential clients you should know to avoid some serious situations. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I needed help finding a doctor.
PACE.
I needed help with my medication.
PACE.
I needed help getting around.
The Shirley Landry Benson PACE Center is a place that helps seniors remain in their homes, providing the care they need. If you or a family member are over 55 years old, you may be eligible for benefits offered by PACE. For more information, contact us at 504-835-0006. PACE, caring for those who cared for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Our guest today has been called one of the best lawyers in America. Attorney Russ Herman has litigated and won multi-million-dollar judgments and has seen how the unethical practices of some attorneys, especially when it comes to class action lawsuits, can really damage public trust. It's an issue that he is very, very concerned about.
Attorney Herman is the senior partner of Herman & Katz. A graduate of Tulane Law School, Herman has authored more than 200 books and articles. He successfully led the team in a case that found the tobacco industry intentionally addicted, misled, and defrauded Louisiana consumers from 1953 to 1996. Russ, it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, John and Sean, I'm glad to be here, and you overstated my qualifications, but I'm glad you did. I don't want you to take any of those words back.
Not a chance, not a chance.
Well, tell us, you heard in the intro that attorney ethics, it's a big deal, and it's kind of no joke that lawyers are often ranked somewhere around used car salesmen as far as their ethical standing. How do you feel about that? I mean, you pay a lot of attention. You're on the ethics committee in the federal courts, and your son is on the ethics evaluation committee for the state board. How do you view all this ethics discussion?
Well, I've been at it 47 years, and by and large, the vast majority of lawyers practice by the rules and the ethics. When this country began with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, actually written by lawyers, lawyers weren't liked very much. And they haven't been liked very much except by their own clients. So if you poll the public, we're really not respected. But if you poll our clients, most of them love us because we're their hope.
Yeah.
When there's government abuse, when the rich and the powerful abuse the little guys, it's the lawyers who have the problems of their clients, and the clients love us because we fight for them.
Right. Well, anything could happen to anyone, and you never know when you might find yourself in need of a really good attorney. John talked about this a little bit earlier. How damaging is it to your profession, though, when you do see those few out there compared to the many who are ethical, really violate those rules that they are required to uphold?
I think the important thing is when a lawyer violates a rule, he or she violates a citizen's rights. We lawyers don't like it. It's not good for the profession, but it's terrible when you affect citizen rights. And there are two primary rules that lawyers have to follow, particularly in litigation. One is candor to the court. You have to tell the truth as a lawyer, whether it's something you write, something you say to the court, and you're supposed to prevent your own clients from lying, not encourage them, and never ever knowingly put a witness on the stand that lies. That's what candor to the court means. Because the other side's getting hurt, and that's the second rule. Fairness to the opposition. Fairness to the opposition. We just had a Saints game. Their rules. Those rules apply to both sides. Whether it's the Texans or the Saints, they have to play by the rules.
Yeah.
Well, we lawyers have to play by the rules. When we don't play by the rules, then we really are not doing right, and we're hurting the whole system, but in particular, whoever the folks are on the other side.
Right. And you know that firsthand. Of course, we mentioned it in our intro.
Yes, I do.
The great case that you and your team litigated, the tobacco case, which was the first time in 50 years, correct me if I'm wrong, that any lawyer successfully went up against big tobacco companies.
Well, in the sense, it's the first one that was ever paid.
Right.
Yes. And I have to differentiate. The lawyers from New Orleans that represented the big tobacco companies are excellent lawyers, are very ethical and played by the rules. They were Phil Whitman, Charlie Gay, Steve Copley.
Excellent lawyers.
Those are great lawyers and play by the rules. But the tobacco companies originally had lawyers that lied, that are responsible in part for taking 200,000 lives a year.
Wow.
And they were very, very unethical. They did many things that were unethical.
Well, let's try and put sort of using broad brushstrokes, or let's do a thumbnail sketch. The tobacco companies, they make the cigarettes that many people today go and buy at the local convenience store. The tobacco companies have a product. At some point in time, many years ago, they figured out cigarettes might be unhealthy. The government decided they needed to look into this. They figured out they were dangerous. Then they started to try and regulate the cigarette companies. The cigarette companies hired lawyers to try and not be interfered with in the selling of the cigarettes. And what you're saying is that these lawyers working for the cigarette companies either helped the tobacco companies in not being interfered with in selling their product, or actually aided and abetted the tobacco companies in hiding evidence, in lying is the word you've used. What do you mean by that?
Well, for 50 years, for example, in 1953, the tobacco companies knew that there were more than 50 poisons, carcinogens, cancer-causing elements in tobacco smoke. Their lawyers helped hide that. And one of the ways they did it, they created a false front called the Center for Tobacco Research to put out false medicine. false science, to attack Alton Ochsner and other doctors who were coming out against cigarette smoking. And the lawyers actually formulated that, and then they hired a PR group, spent hundreds of millions of dollars over 50 years to hide the truth, to make it look like it was okay, really, to smoke, and to target our children. Our children had targets on the back from the time they were 10 or 11 years old. And lawyers were behind that. They destroyed documents. They hid documents. They sent documents overseas. Now, that's a serious charge, but it's revealed in the tobacco documents, and there's one bit of evidence that absolutely can't be refuted, that lawyers were responsible for a lot of the problems of tobacco.
Okay, let's hear about it.
Well, you have a picture.
Let's show that picture.
Yes, let's bring that picture up so everyone can see. Tell us about what's going on
It's
in
the
this
screen
picture.
now.
Well, the
Tell us about this
5
picture.
executives that were paid millions of dollars in bonuses a year was summoned before Congress and swore under oath with their lawyers there that tobacco smoke was not harmful. There was no evidence that tobacco was harmful. They swore under oath that nicotine was not addictive.
All right, so that picture we just looked at, that's from April 1994.
That's correct.
And that picture was taken of these executives. These were the top executives of the major tobacco companies. You're talking Marlboro, R.J. Reynolds,
Philip Morris?
Philip
Talking
Morris.
about Winston, Salem, Cools, Marlboro, L&M,
all the biggest.
all the biggies.
And there you were, you and your team, about 20, is that right?
Right.
Going up
20 lawyers.
against hundreds of lawyers working for the tobacco companies.
That's true. And if you think about it, their lawyers were sitting at the table.
Right.
Their lawyers knew that these fellas were lying under oath. They're rascals.
How do we know that when they raised their hand and swore that that there was no were cancer causing, or the smoke from the cigarettes was cancer causing? How do we know that they had to know that it was a lie?
Well, in 1996, we filed suit in Louisiana in the Scott case.
Scott was the name of a person
Right.
who had cancer.
Right. And Wendell Gauthier, one of the lawyers who started this, had
Local lawyer.
passed away, a local lawyer, and that left us with 7 Louisiana law firms. We filed suit. During that suit, we found many, many documents implicating specifically Big Tobacco's lawyers. For example, one document says, Shook Hardy tells us to keep addiction undercover. Health effects undercover. Shook Hardy is a Kansas City law firm. So we knew, because they knew, in their documents in 1953, they started polling youth. And they found out in a Roper survey that if you were under 13, you were most susceptible to smoking and you'd become addicted very quickly. In the 70s, they were hiding documents and destroying them. In the 80s, the health effects were very, very well known. And so where were these documents? These documents were in huge safes, like bank safes, in several law firms that did nothing but represent tobacco. So when these folks lied to Congress and to the American people in 1994, their lawyers knew they were lying.
And on at 2 o'clock, it was 2 o'clock a.m., you got a very, very important phone call. We have to take a quick break because I want, when we come back, to talk a little bit about what happened and really what should be learned from your case, from that particular case as we go forward, because there's so many big cases, class action lawsuits that are going on right now here in Louisiana. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on the other side. And of course, we want to get our viewers in on this conversation. So after the break, we'll be answering your questions. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
never forget our best teachers, the ones who do so much more than teach. They inspire and insist we bring our best in everything we do. We find those mentors in our Catholic schools. It's why Catholic school graduates consistently go on to college, land better jobs, embrace faith, and lead. Louisiana Catholic Schools, in a class of their own.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Well, now is the time when we take questions from folks out there just like you, so we are going to go ahead and get to it. And I know we were kind of, we left them hanging on a cliff there, talking about that phone call that you got at 2 a.m., which really was so pivotal to the case, was it not?
Yes, it was. It was the key document. About 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang. I sort of stirred out of bed. Hello, is this Mr. Herman? Yes, it is. Who is this? My name's Hatsy Heap. I said, what can I do for you, Miss Heap? Well, NBC News, somebody up there told me to call you about the cigarette companies. Well, I woke up.
Right.
I said, yes, what can I do for you? She said, well, I was engaged to a vice president at Philip Morris who conducted experiments with tobacco, and there are thousands of pieces of paper in my basement he left, and he's out of here, and I think somebody needs to come get these papers.
Wow.
And I said, would you give me your address? And if I'm there, like at 8 in the morning, oh yes, I want you to come. So I called a friend of mine in Virginia, a lawyer, at 3 a.m. And I said, well, I guess then it was 2 a.m. on the East Coast.
Right, right.
And I said, listen, get your paralegals and a lawyer over there to Miss Heaps. He was in Norfolk. I said, get up to Richmond, get all those papers, bag them, make sure you say where you got them, make her sign for them, get them to the airport in Norfolk. I'll meet you there.
Wow, what an incredible story.
Well, what was in the papers?
Well, my friend Bob Redfern, great New Orleans lawyer, and I are going through them, and we both at the same time said, holy moly, look at this.
Wow.
And it said, how much nicotine does it take to keep a normal person hooked?
Wow.
And it was dated 1962. So they knew that nicotine was addictive, indeed, like an opiate.
Right.
And they were trying to manipulate cigarettes to find out how much nicotine it would take to addict somebody. That way they could make light cigarettes, you see. They could reduce the nicotine, like they were doing something good, but still addict folks. And
well, let me see if I'm keeping up. So you could sell light cigarettes, and I remember as a little kid, light cigarettes were suddenly, everybody had a light version of the cigarette, but you're saying that these cigarettes were still addictive.
Oh yeah, and they put filters on them, but they knew that filters didn't do anything. It was a psychological crutch. The interesting thing is there's a byproduct of human urine called urea. And they had big vats of urea. So as they reduced the nicotine level, they put this urea in tobacco, and it would increase the hit to the brain, so that every time you smoked, you'd get a hit, you'd get a hit, you'd get a hit, and it would travel much quicker.
Wow.
I mean, they
were chemically altering the tobacco.
Oh, absolutely.
And so at that point you realized, even though perhaps you had suspected, but at that point you actually had the evidence there in your hands, the irrefutable evidence of what was going on.
There had been other evidence, but nothing as
like
dynamic as this, and it really became a focal point for the trial, that and the fact that they were hanging targets on the backs of our children.
Well, we have a question here from a viewer which says, what instruments or avenues does a trial lawyer have to help call out or expose a lawyer's unethical behavior? So what avenues are there?
Well, each bar association, let's take Louisiana. The Supreme Court of Louisiana has set forth some rules that the Bar Association has adopted. They're called ethical considerations. They're also professional obligations. When you are certain that a lawyer in a case, either side, has violated ethics, you're obligated to report it. And it goes to a committee, and it's reviewed, and evidence is reviewed. Then it may go to a committee that includes citizens, not just lawyers. Ultimately, the matters go to the Supreme Court. You could be suspended, you could be publicly chastised, or they can lift your certificate to practice law. It's very, very serious.
And very difficult, is it not? If you level that kind of charge against another attorney?
You should be as sure as you can be, and you're encouraged always to do the right thing. For instance, if I know that someone's been unethical, a lawyer, I have to report it. The question is when.
Okay.
Because there's this underlying issue that if you're in a lawsuit or you're in a settlement talks, a threat of reporting someone for violating ethics could be seen as trying to get an advantage, an unfair advantage. So most lawyers will say, okay, I'm going to report it, but I'm going to wait till the fight is over. You could file it under seal, but then the other side may be accused wrongly and they don't know.
And when you say file it under seal, for those who are not, a part of this profession, when you say file it under seal, what exactly do you mean?
The accusation is filed under seal with any evidence or an explanation, and it doesn't become public, and it doesn't really go to a committee. The problem with that is some years may pass, the other side may not know that this has been filed, and they're entitled to say, wait, you're wrong, we're innocent. So most lawyers are confronted with a situation, know they have to report it, and will wait till the fight is over and then report it as they should.
I want to just take a step back too, because we spent some time really focusing on a gigantic case where billions and billions of dollars are at stake, and lawyers who are paid lots and lots and lots of money defending these tobacco companies are caught red-handed being unethical. But it goes both ways. You have plaintiff, and I'm a plaintiff personal injury lawyer, you have plaintiff lawyers who can be unethical too, where maybe they bend the rules, break the rules, maybe trying to make money that they shouldn't, and they should be caught and they should be reported for unethical behavior. You got bad apples on both sides, in both barrels.
I think the problem is that public-wise, and there are these massive PR firms, there's a corporation right now that spent $800 million putting some...
And there's an analogy, and I was going to get to that with you. There's a ton of stuff in the newspaper. I mean, I think it's every day, full-page ads, BP talking about fraud, people filing claims for BP, if you're making a claim for BP commercial claims. And full disclosure, I represent people who are making claims on BP. They've got gigantic amounts of money, and they're involved in litigation. And I wanted to ask you about the parallels there.
Well, here's the situation with BP, and I don't want to dwell on it. My firm represents a lot of businesses, and the Shrimpers Association, for example, and has for a time, and my son is co-lead. So I don't want to make it look like this is a one-way street. If lawyers representing businesses or individuals have done something wrong, then they have to be reported and they have to be dealt with. It's not just... Now, I don't know anything that a BP lawyer has done. BP has done a number of things that if BP executives were lawyers, it would be unethical conduct. And so I want to make it clear, I don't know anything, I have no accusations about BP lawyers. It's the BP folks themselves and their multi-million-dollar PR machine.
Say multi-million
well,
dollars.
800 million is a
That's what they're spending on PR.
PR.
And I'll just say one other thing. I saw it in tobacco. I've seen it in other cases, and it's a trick. It says, okay, we are going to reframe the issue. We're like a photographer cutting a photograph. We're going to reframe it. We were bad. In 10 years, we killed 11 people. We have 97% of all violations in our industry, safety violations. That's a lot, 97%. We are going to take the focus off of us. We're going to spend $800 million saying we've done the right thing. We're good guys, even though we paid out even though we made $11 billion in the first quarter of this year, which is more than we paid out. We're the good guys.
Right.
The bad guys are these terrible lawyers, these 1,300 lawyers and these 300,000 citizens that have filed legitimate claims. And what are we going to say about them? Well, you got some bad apples.
You know, and I want to say this too for our viewers. We're actually going to do a show, two shows, all about the BP settlements, and we're going to go into depth, and we're going to represent both perspectives as well as we can. And we've invited BP to come join us in the discussion. I think they're just going to provide a statement, but we're going to go into depth about it. Today, this show and the next show with you is not about BP, but I just wanted to draw the analogy. That's
We have to make a distinction between lawyers that represent BP, who are some of the finest in the country, and BP, which is the Darth Vader of oil companies. So there's a distinction there, and I do want to get back to lawyers. For example, you said they're all
And actually, believe it or not, we are out of time.
Oh, goodness.
It went by so quickly. But that just means that you're going to have to come back on. Okay?
Yeah, can I bring Sigarokio with me?
We want you to bring Sigarokio. Yes, yes.
Sigarokio.
Yes, we want to know all about Sigarokio.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Well, we told them earlier that it was going to be a fascinating conversation, and it has been that and so much more. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
That is all the
Definitely have
time
you back.
we have this week on Power of Attorney. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember to keep those questions coming. You can send them through Facebook, Twitter, and email.
That's right. Be sure to visit our website at johnredmannpoa.com, and you can find more information and links to everything on today's show and past episodes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.